Does the Cowboys signing Andy Dalton take away from Dak's leverage?
Okay, I don't know what leverage Dak had there for a while, aside from the fact he was the only notable quarterback on the roster. I still believe the franchise tag is out there for Dak to sign. I still believe they want Dak Prescott to be their starting quarterback. But what we're about to talk about with Matt Hasselbeck is the eerily similar situation Andy Dalton was in after 4 years starting as Dak Prescott is at starting. Now, granted, there's been 30 extra wins since then, but they both had 40 wins in their first 4 years. Now, Dak Prescott threw 30 less interceptions than Andy Dalton did his first 4 years. And Andy Dalton had a lot of weapons, as did Dak Prescott. Cincinnati Bengals, though, didn't have an indoor practice facility. They didn't have a scouting department. The Dallas Cowboys did have that. Plus, the Dallas Cowboys had an offensive line that was one of the most noted and popular offensive lines. And I mean, this is a very good signing. And it's, what, $32 million cheaper than what Dak Prescott's asking for? Yeah. I'm going to talk to Matt Hasselbeck about it here in about 20 seconds. I got a lot of questions because what is the message that Jerry Jones is sending to Dak Prescott? Is he telling him, get out of town? We'll ask Hasselbeck in about 9 seconds. Dalton signs a $3 million 1-year deal with incentives up to $7 million to the Dallas Cowboys. They're obviously in a very interesting position with Dak Prescott, who they've offered a franchise tag. There has been zero updates on how that negotiation's going. He has until July to sign the $32 or $31.9 million franchise tag. And when you look at the numbers, I am not saying Dak Prescott's a better quarterback than Andy Dalton, because to be honest, I'm not 100% certain that is the case. Andy Dalton is a winning quarterback. Does he still have years in him of winning football? And will he getting this playbook, 2-3 months in advance before Dak Prescott with Mike McCarthy and this entire Zoom session time? Is Andy Dalton potentially the starting quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys this year?
Well, you got a lot in that question there. Listen, Andy Dalton absolutely has winning football ahead of him. But no, I think this is Dak Prescott's team. Andy Dalton found himself in a really tough spot. The Bengals made it seem like they were going to hang on to him. He was going to get his $17 million to basically either play or mentor Joe Burrow, much like John Kitna did to Carson Palmer in Cincinnati when Carson Palmer was the first pick overall. But out of nowhere, the Bengals flip-flop, didn't know what to do, couldn't make a decision, made a decision late in the game, and now all of a sudden Andy Dalton finds himself released, free agent, gets to pick his landing spot where he wants to play football for the first time since he was in high school, and he chose to go to TCU. So I think Andy Dalton was just looking around. There were definitely teams that wanted to bring in Andy Dalton, teams like let's just say the Jacksonville Jaguars probably were willing to pay him a lot more money. Really? Yes, Gardner Minshew's our guy, but we need a backup plan because if we don't do well this year, there's going to be a new head coach in Jacksonville. So there's those situations, but I think Andy Dalton, I believe this is Andy Dalton's 9th year in the league, maybe 10th year in the league, something like that. Andy Dalton probably looked around and said, you know what, this is not the year to be a free agent quarterback. There are not a lot of openings. However, next year, there could be some great openings. There are some veteran quarterbacks who may or may not play next year. Drew Brees, Phillip Rivers, Tom Brady. Other things open up. And so if I'm Andy Dalton, I would want to be a free agent next year and take this year to get with a great organization, an organization who spends money, has an obsession with winning, an organization that has great offensive coaching, and kind of work on your game and be ready for next year. And I think that's probably what Andy Dalton did, took less money to go with a team that potentially could win it all. And, by the way, he happens to be living in Dallas, has a house in Dallas, seems pretty convenient.
Okay, there's a lot to digest there from your answer, but let me dive into that a little bit. Did you hear from sources that Jacksonville was interested, or is that just what you're speculating because that would make sense?
No, I mean, I don't even need to know from sources. I mean, just look around. Doug Marrone was sort of a surprise keep-your-job candidate this past year. So, I mean, when you have a coach like that it's like a win at all cost, you're just trying to win now. You're not thinking about the future. Now, I know that they would love it if Gardner Minshew became the guy. There's no doubt about that. Why else would you trade away Nick Foles? But
I think they're tanking. We think they're tanking. We think tank. tank. I think there's a chance. I mean, they're trying to trade away everybody. Cam Newton's on the market still. They're not interested in him. They weren't in the Tom Brady sweepstakes. And Ngakoue wants the hell out of there. Jalen Ramsey's gone. Everybody. It feels like they're Trevor Lawrence sweepstakes, and that could be completely wrong. But it does feel like that's potentially a case.
No, I don't. I just think they're like searching for an identity, searching for direction. Who's really in charge? I'm sure they know that. It's just probably not evident to us. But like to me, I believe it was Leonard Fournette who came out and did an interview and said, "Hey," basically was lobbying for the team to sign Cam Newton. And it seems very logical, actually, for the same reason that I said that Jacksonville would be interested. They should be interested in Cam Newton as well. But what happened the very next day?
He's on the trading block.
He's on the trading block. So basically, that's not what they want. I think they really want Gardner Minshew to be the guy. Minshew mania. I believe he's, in their mind, very, very marketable, has a lot of upside. They're a team that struggles a little bit with filling the seats. They're a team that has to work at marketing. They can't. They're not like some of these other teams, the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Dallas Cowboys, who are just going to have sellouts all the time. So it's a little bit more challenging to be successful in Jacksonville than it is in some of the other markets.
All right, agree to disagree. I think they're tanking. But was there any other teams that were interested in Andy Dalton? And how apparent was it that he was going to Dallas to you? Because it came out of nowhere to me. I thought he was going to Jacksonville.
I thought he was going to Jacksonville too, Pat. Look, there were some very preliminary conversations between Dalton and several teams. And I believe that at some point Bill Belichick at least did some fact-finding on him. But obviously it never got very serious. If you're Andy Dalton and you have a chance to go to New England and be a starter versus going to Dallas, and look, the presumption is 80 to 90% chance he's backing up Dak Prescott. The only way he isn't is if that thing really goes sideways. But look, it was really, really smart of Dallas to do this. And everybody says, hey, give some insurance in case Dak stays out. But, Pat, the other thing that really nobody is talking about right now.
Here we go. Okay? This is what I like.
Let's talk about what happens during the football season this year if Dak Prescott on October 13th, before the Cowboys are going to play the Giants on a Sunday, what if he tests positive for COVID-19? And what if for the next 2 weeks, Dak Prescott has to be in quarantine? Okay? And what if he's the only guy on the Cowboys who tests positive, so the NFL says, Cowboys, you go ahead, you can still play your game this weekend. Now, the Dallas Cowboys, instead of playing with whoever it is it Cooper Rush? I don't even know who their backup quarterback is.
He just got fired.
I mean, just imagine that instead of having that, you can have a guy who his first 5 years in the NFL, he took a moribund Cincinnati team, and he wasn't a great quarterback, but they made the playoffs his first 5 years. So to me, this is a small price to pay for quarterback insurance, not just if Dak's not around, but if they have an emergency, and whether it be COVID-19 or whether it be an injury. The Dallas Cowboys now probably have the best backup quarterback in football.
I never thought that in my life. That is a real thought, though, that has to be entering into people's minds as they're preparing for this NFL season. That schedule is supposed to be released here soon with no international games when there was a bunch of international games scheduled. So the NFL is already preparing for the COVID-19 fallout. I would assume teams have to think and prepare for it as well. Like, hey, what if our guy gets knocked out? What if he gets hurt? What if whatever the case is? I think signing Andy Dalton was a good move.